Hi again. So this is the third part of Poetics of Generosity workshop. So to continue where we left off, um, I feel like feeling ingrateful serves a purpose for us. Perhaps it protects us. There's moments that are scary and full of fear, and we do actually have to protect ourselves. So I don't feel like this state of thankfulness is one that we can stay in all the time. But we need to be able to control our own lives and to find the power of our poems. So I feel like if we find ourselves in a really depressed and disconnected place, it's possible for us to access this sense of thankfulness and to kind of step out of that metaphorical car that I was talking about and feel more objective and connected to the world around us, to this moment and to nature, and as Walt Whitman said, to feel monstrous and large, which is also hopefully to feel kind if it's not just full of ego. Um, so certain Buddhists pray to there's a bodhisattva. The bodhisattvas are like the deities or the gods. The bodhisattva of great compassion, and they sing hymns. And this is a way, so to develop this sense of compassion is a way of speaking about generosity and gratefulness. So they will sing hymns that just repeat this idea over and over again, which is a way of taking ourselves out of the realm of sadness and pain and depression and bringing ourselves into this other realm. I think poetry can do this also in the type of poems that I'm showing you. There's a Buddhist story that I wanted to mention quickly about a monk who just walked around thanking absolutely everything. So he was walking and he thanked the tree that was in front of him, and he thanked his own sandals, and he thanked every blade of grass. And so it can be a kind of spiritual preoccupation, and I feel like it's a point of intersection in between kind of spirituality and poems, where poems can express this non-binary way of thinking, which helps us to connect more closely to the present moment and to nature and to the world around us, rather than anger, which separates us and protects us, perhaps protects us in a good way, but there has to be limits on that anger. Walt Whitman, who I read from earlier, has his book is called Leaves of Grass, and in that he basically lists all the things in his world. And he was around during the Civil War in America, which was very violent, and he basically thanks absolutely everything, and it becomes almost like a warm bath at a certain point. Certain poems make you feel good, they make you feel connected, as Whitman's does. I feel like the way that they do it is this. These poems don't just repeat trauma and pain, but they help in a revolutionary way to find a way through it. I feel like generosity is that way. Okay, so if we can go back to the first page again, let me read the last quote that I haven't read yet. This is from Dennis Johnson, The White Fires of Venus. The remedy for loneliness is in learning to admit solitude as one admits the bayonet, gracefully, now that already it pierces the heart. So I feel that this is very wonderful, and I hesitate to try to explain anything which is a little complex and wonderful. But let me just point you to this gesture of the bayonet. So the bayonet is a knife, right? So if you admit the bayonet, that means that you've been poked like by a knife or stabbed by a knife. So he says, even in this case, you should give over to this moment of being stuck by the bayonet gracefully, now that it has already pierced your heart. So just allow the world to be what it is. Allow the solitude to overcome you for a moment. Don't always fight against it. Allow the pain to happen. Just allow it, breathe, and even thank the world for giving you this pain. Perhaps you can learn from it. Thank the person for cutting you off in the car or stepping on your foot, because maybe we can learn something from it. I feel that that's what certain poems do, is they help us to find a way through the inevitable anger and conflict that's around us. Now, um, I want to just point out that many of us have very complex and kind of angry relationships with the people who we're close to, and the gestures of gratitude, the gestures of generosity are not always clear. So, for example, many parents will not say that they love you, but they will give you some like peeled fruit, or my mother makes tomato pasta and always makes me tomato pasta. My father and I play chess games together, and this is how they show me that they love me, even if they don't tell me that they love me at those moments. So I feel like in poems about generosity, we are trying to capture, we are trying to find the gestures of generosity. So they don't always say, I am generous, or you are generous, or it's good to be grateful, but they demonstrate it for you. So they try to show ways in which the people with conflict in our lives, how we bring them closer, what are the rituals in our family which connect us and destroy the walls and divisions between us. What are those rituals? So a poem about generosity doesn't even have to use the word generosity, but it just demonstrates the rituals of your particular family's generosity. Okay? And it's important to remember, I feel like, that these days, like using gratitude and trying to connect to the world through gratitude, trying to feel better through gratitude, it doesn't mean that we don't feel anger. We still can feel anger. We can still feel trauma. But we want to feel good also. And we want to try to heal and to help the other people around us heal. And these days with poetry, there's a lot of trauma and pain. And it's easier to get published these days if we're writing about trauma and pain. It's commodified in the poetry world. The markets of poetry want our trauma. And we can give it to them. But there are ways of writing about anger and trauma which also include whatever this is that I'm talking about, generosity and forgiveness and a connectedness between people. So we can talk about anger in ways that also use that lens of generosity, rather than just repeating the anger, and I'm angry at everybody else. Finding a way through it like mature adults. Okay, now I want to do something which I don't usually do, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to read you two poems, and one of them is by me. So I figured I have lots of insight into my own life, of course, so I could tell you the background to a poem where I don't actually use the word generosity or gratitude or thankfulness anywhere, but that's what the poem is about. Okay, so I just told you about my parents. I'm an only child, so there's a kind of triangle that my parents and I form with, perhaps my father and my mother and me. I told you that some of the rituals of thankfulness that my parents have. My mother makes tomato pasta, and my father likes to play chess. So I will say this to prepare you for this poem, that my mother, I think, is the truly generous one in our family, and my father is perhaps a little less generous and a little bit hard to deal with sometimes. So the time that I describe in this poem is it's one where we're swimming in a lake. My dad and I are swimming, and my mom is sitting on a rock and kind of looking at us and waving. And so what happens here is, in the poem, what I try to describe is that this moment of feeling an intense connection with my parents is one where the divisions between us begin to vanish. So I don't feel like just myself, but I relate to my father. And so I speak from my father's perspective for a second, and I speak from my mother's perspective. So in a way, I am all of them. So I start by saying I am I am the sun, I am the rattle-brained son. But then later I say, I am the bearded man, and I am the woman. So, in a way, by calling myself them, I am this, I am him, I am her, the divisions between us break down. And I meant to show the sense of the triangle, and the triangle getting larger. And we, all of us, as we feel empathy for each other, we almost exchange places through these moments of ritual and compassion. Okay? That's what I was trying to do. Maybe it's not a good idea to explain or even to read our own poems in a workshop, but here goes. Swimming in Church Lake. That thundercloud, north, is a bathtub overflowing silver. The man with the beard is my father. What current urges me to the road, him to the forest? My mother hugs her knees on the big granite rock. I am the sun with tinnitus from rock concerts, quiet as a dentist drill just over my head, shifting one ear to the other. Below us, lake bottom, darkness blossoms. The feather of dusk is upon us. Light, a dragonfly, scatters. Water skaters. The man with the beard swims out further. We are a triangle of waves. I am the rattle-brained sun. That sound is the mind treading water. I am the bearded man. I keep the colorblind distances. I am the woman, the trembling celestial ladder my body. I am love, keeping the triangle large. I am thunder. My ear sings. So, basically, in this poem, I was trying to capture a moment of intense closeness with my family, and whatever divisions we sometimes feel, there are some moments of connectedness where my own sense of identity almost vanishes a little bit, and I feel such intense connection with my father, with my mother, or with nature. So in this moment, the speaker of the poem also says that he is thunder, and he is love, and he is waves, and he is the woman. And I feel like this is what Walt Whitman was trying to do as well. You can become monstrous and large in a poem, and your heart can become big enough to allow space for all of the people around us, and potentially for the healing of the people around us. Now, one more poem I'd like to read before I give you your last prompt. Ross Gay is quite an amazing poet. What's the name of his book? Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude, which is an amazing book. I think this is from that book. So the last poem I want to read is called Ending the Estrangement. And I put this one next to mine because I feel like in this case, there is a division that has gone on between the speaker and his mother. And through the poem, you feel a sense of gratefulness or gratitude, which narrows the estrangement or separation. So it's about a sense of thankfulness, which allows for a connection, which I feel like is this kind of magical thing that feeling thankful can do, and which some poems can convey. So let me read this one. Ending the Estrangement by Ross Gay. From my mother's sadness, which was to me unbearable, until it felt to me not like what I thought it felt like to her, and so felt inside myself, like death, like dying, which I would almost have rather done, though adding to her sadness would rather die than do. But by sitting still, like what in fact it was, a form of gratitude, which, when last it came, drifted like a meadow lit by torches of cardinal flower, one of whose crimson blooms, when a hummingbird hovered nearby. I slipped into my mouth, thereby coaxing the bird to scrawl on my tongue its heart's frenzy, its fleet nectar questing song. With whom? With you, dear mother, I now sing along. I don't want to interpret this poem very much, but just there's this moment when the mother's sadness is unbearable to the son, and it's a division. But then this moment of gratitude comes, and a connectedness, and then the division between the mother and son melts. And you can feel it as you read the poem. This is, I feel like, a magical thing that poems can do. They can divide the differences between binaries, between the thing that we think we're opposite from. You know. So the last prompt that I want to give you is, I would like you to write about one difficult person in your life, and then document a moment of connectedness between you and that person. So I think it probably won't be very hard for you to find a person who you've had conflict with, a family member, an aunt, or an uncle, or a friend where there's conflict, and just try to write an occasion of connectedness, even just a walking together. Okay, thank you very much for this workshop. I'm losing my voice. I have a cold. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed it.